In American society, money is a taboo topic. We're taught at a young age it's improper to talk about it, but we're also bombarded with messages about the power and importance of money in our everyday lives. And by not talking about it, we miss out on the skills and lessons we need to effectively understand and financially plan. That changes today. Welcome to Money Tales. Hosted by Sandy Brager and Cami Doder, Money Tales brings more than 35 years of combined professional experience in personal finance to demystify money and demonstrate what it's like to speak openly about personal financial matters. Join us each episode as they interview modern-day movers and shakers about how money decisions intertwine with their daily lives in order to give you better insight into productive financial conversations. Subscribe today and register for our blog Fathom at aspiriant.com/podcasts to increase your money mojo. And now, here's Cami and Sandy.
Jodi Morris joins us this week on Money Tales. Jodi is a fierce advocate for education and empowerment, especially for girls around the globe. From her own struggles navigating the financial aid system when she applied to college, Jodi recognizes the immense challenges faced by girls in less privileged parts of the world. She shares with us her passion for leveling the playfield and making education accessible to all, regardless of location or circumstances. Jodi's commitment doesn't stop there. Through impact investing, she's aligning her goals and her values by channeling resources into initiatives that support female entrepreneurship and education in Africa and beyond. Let me tell you more about Jodi. She is a global connector whose mission is to help people maximize how they invest their time, talent, and money. Through her company, Connecting Growth Globally, Jodi curates and leads immersive, small group travel that challenge participants to think more purposefully. Jodi is also a success coach, helping individuals and teams define and share their combined personal and professional stories.
Here are 3 key money topics Jodi hits on in this conversation. First, how her mom, who went back to college in her mid-30s after being a stay-at-home parent for more than 10 years, has been a source of inspiration. Second, how Jodi's modest financial situation in college fed into her experiencing imposter syndrome. And third, how and why Jodi and her husband keep their financial accounts separate and invest differently from one another. We hope you share this episode with a friend, and please subscribe to Money Tales on your favorite podcast platform. Now on to our conversation with Jodi Morris.
Welcome to the Money Tales podcast. I'm Cami Doder.
And I'm Sandy Brager.
Sandy, I want to talk about that article we both read, the one that was in the Wall Street Journal, titled, "What We Fight About When We Fight About Money." And then the subtitle was, "New Research Tackles the Source of Financial Conflict and What We Can Do About It." I'm drawn to these articles, of course, and it's an important topic. And we know that money is one of the key issues in relationships.
But it's not. It's just the manifestation.
We could talk more about that. Yeah, I appreciated them going into the fact that financial disagreements tend to be stand-ins for deeper issues in our relationships, to your point. And I liked that they talked about based on this research, because the way we use money is a reflection of our values, character, and beliefs.
Our judgments, too.
Totally. Sandy, didn't you love when you got to the line about there's no cure, but the antidote is to talk about money more?
Yes, talk about money more. Because if you exercise those muscles, you have them developed, it can help take the edge off of arguments. And those arguments really do tend not to be about the money itself. It tends to be about a mismatch of communication or values. That's something that we talk with clients about all the time, because things can get heated. And just taking a step back and trying to get to the root of what the disagreement is or the tension is can be really helpful.
For sure. I really appreciate them highlighting this sense of mission and how important it is to share values, even more so than sharing personality traits. I was thinking about like dating, and we're so conscious about how aligned we are and what we like to do. And the encouragement to me was, but make sure you're aligned with your values.
That's spot on. For anyone who's dating right now, or any relationship, whether you're married or not, or however long, it's never too late to start having these important money conversations. If folks can get to them at the outset, and again, begin to build those muscles that we've been talking about, it can be so helpful, make such a big difference. And there are people, there are family dynamics coaches and money coaches that can help you if you need assistance. Sometimes financial advisors can be helpful too. But if you want a trained expert in those areas, going outside of financial advisory into more of the coaching and therapy can be really helpful when the tensions are really deep.
You know how I love coaches. I think they're so important. Well, let's pivot to our guest today. Welcome, Jodi Morris, to the Money Tales podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me. And I have to get my hands on this article because I'm all about values and money. And I think we're going to talk a lot about that today.
I think we will. Would you introduce yourself and provide a couple pivotal moments that have taken place in your life that really influenced who you are today?
I'm Jodi Morris. I title myself as a global connector and investor. I'm really passionate about two things: connecting people and ideas from the US and across the world. Also, coaching. I'm passionate about that, but specifically, and money is a part of it. As I like to say, how do we maximize the investment of our time and talent in our money? And when I say investment, it's really broad. It's not just what am I investing in a company or a mutual fund to earn a return. It's much broader. Like, what are we giving to? How do we spend it, et cetera? So that's why I'm so excited about this conversation today. I grew up in Wisconsin. My parents divorced when I was preteen, but I honestly don't ever remember them having a happy relationship or a healthy relationship. I wanted to get out of Wisconsin, maybe because of that. It was a pretty volatile childhood. Education was always important to me. That's something that was stressed to me by words and example by my mom. And I went to school, what I call 90 miles away, but a world away, at Northwestern University. It was a highlight, a pivotal time of my life, and a very good investment of money. I graduated. It was a tough job market. I was applying everywhere. I thought I'd always be in the Midwest, maybe Chicago. And I got a job at JP Morgan in New York in a training program. And I took it and just said to myself, look, 2 years, I can go to business school, do something different. I ended up staying at that firm for 12. I loved it. 7 years of that was in New York. And then when I wanted more trees and ocean and so forth, I moved to San Francisco, and I was there for over 2 decades. I did a career shift after my time in San Francisco. I stayed with JP Morgan, then I joined a startup, then I joined a firm, Matthews Asia, and I've always had led our sales and business development efforts. Product and marketing and sales was my expertise in the investment management industry. It was funny because I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, but I knew that I loved to write and I loved to tell stories, my own and the stories of others. I was a math major in school, so clearly I loved financials. I love numbers. I'm very analytical, and I loved helping people and exploring the world. So how can I pull that all together? So I jumped ship and I started a new, what I call a portfolio career. And I do all these things. I invest for myself. I try and do it, and I'm always changing how I can do it more and more impactfully. I coach others, and it's really about bringing this story together, your personal and professional. And it just gets to, how you can maximize your time and your talents and your money. And I lead these really cool global experiences where I am just bringing people to new places. Could be Rwanda, Tanzania, Cambodia, Guatemala, but more than the place, it's more the experience in the travel, because I'm connecting them to a variety of people. A lot of them are young. These countries are really young, and I think it's important for us to learn from young people, not just people our age or older. They're students, they're entrepreneurs, artists, they're journalists, and they're fascinating. And when we connect with them and their different backgrounds and cultures and ambitions, we find ourselves, we're very similar, but we're also very different. And that pushes us out of our comfort zone, and we think differently about our time, our talent, and our money.
We're going to get into some good stuff. Thanks for sharing, Jodi, about your upbringing and your parents and the struggles there between them and in their relationship, and that you had this burning desire, you wanted to get out. Describe how you were thinking about money at that time. You're young, and you need money to get out. Where did you learn your money values at that age?
My mom, we were kind of lower middle class. He had a job. He hadn't been to college. And my mom was stay at home. And in her early mid 30s, she wanted a little bit more. And so she had this idea, hey, I would love to go to college. And my dad wanted nothing of that. He used the excuse of money. We don't have money to pay for it. But I think it was really about the power. I don't want my wife to have more education. What will people think if that happens? He kiboshed that idea. And that was really the trigger for my mom to go, no, I have to get an education. And I remember her always saying, like, why it's so important is it's the one thing that nobody can take away from you once you get it. Can't lose it. So she did it. And she was going through the process of single mom, 2 kids, preteens were difficult. And she went to college locally. She became a nurse. And she was also in the process of going through a divorce. So it was 1984. And literally in the same 2-week period, she graduated from college, the divorce was finalized. And so for me, that was a very pivotal time. Now I was starting high school at the time. So think of that education that I had. What do you value? And she valued education, but she also valued independence. And education was that step to independence. She worked like 2 jobs at night, making minimum wage to fund her education. It was really, really hard. And I watched my dad, who didn't value it, didn't get it, was holding it against her. And I just said to myself, that's not going to be me. I need to have some money and I need to know what to do with it.
You told us you went to Northwestern, which is not an inexpensive school. Being a math major there sounds pretty intense, Jodi.
My mom created this child who really said, I want to do this and I'm going to figure it out. And I discovered this thing called financial aid. This is pre-internet time. Like, first of all, I was going to the library and checking out books and, doing all of my research, but then ordering all these things and trying to read these materials about how financial aid works. I don't know about loans and grants and what are the difference, Pell Grants. I don't know, but I was kind of figuring it out.
By the way, that's not easy research. The materials on that are not crystal clear. The government makes it really hard to understand.
They do. And with no context, as a 16-year-old, yeah, really difficult. And I remember one day saying to my mom, like, I need a copy of your tax forms. And then please sign here. She goes, what are you doing? I go, I'm filing it for financial aid. So that is the long and the short of it. Between the government and the school, I got a really generous aid package. It was less expensive for me to go to Northwestern than it was my local, University of Wisconsin. I did it. Best decision I ever did. I had some loans and then I worked really hard to pay them off, but they're certainly not the loans that we see people taking out today. And so I'm grateful for them.
How did you feel about taking those loans? Because again, you're a young person figuring this all out on their own. What did that feel like?
I just knew it'll be fine. I'll pay it off. If I work hard, I'll get a good job and this will be taken care of.
So it didn't put pressure on you?
It didn't put pressure on me, no.
Jodi, in college, were you talking with any of your friends about the financial aid and the pressures you were in? Were you having your money conversations?
Not really. I showed up and, you kind of look around and you go, should I even be here? I don't have money. There are certainly people here that do. I don't know if I'm smart enough, all those things, all those insecurities. So no, I didn't want to bring something up to my peers that made me might look less than. And I felt like money at the time would do that.
You kept it to yourself. You get through school. You get a great offer from JP Morgan to head to New York. What was going on with you and your money relationship at that time?
Moving to New York was scary. It's expensive.
Expensive.
Scary. A lot of people.
And when you grow up in the Midwest, everybody's like, you're going to get mugged. It's going to be horrible. And it was amazing. I had 2 roommates. That said, my rent, I kept it reasonable. I had a good job, but I had those loans to pay off. So I was just really focused and I budgeted a lot. And I was able to find all the most fun things to do in New York City on a dime. I didn't feel like I was sacrificing that much, but I was really focused on paying off the loans. I paid off my loans in just over 2 years, which I don't really know how I did now looking back, but I'm really proud that I did. I made decisions in my career less about what the job paid. I mean, I was in financial services in New York City. I was getting paid well, but it was more about what I'm going to learn. One of the reasons I took the job at JP Morgan, I'm like, I'm getting this training and they're going to pay me. It was incredible. And so I just always looked at it that way. When I was coming out of the program and choosing what areas I was going to work in, I really looked at people. Who is my boss? Who is this team? Where am I going to learn the most? Is this a growing area of financial services and of investment management specifically, which is the track I took? And that was the best decision ever. That's still the advice I tell people, because really the marginal decisions you can make, maybe I could have done investment banking and earned a little bit more, but it wasn't what I wanted to do. It wasn't feeling like it represented my values. I felt like they would be using me. And in this case, I almost felt powerful, like, oh my God, I'm getting the bigger value than they are in all the learning and the opportunities that I'm getting.
So you brought up values. And since Sandy and I talked a little bit about that earlier, how do you define your values? And importantly, Jodi, how do you believe you determined your values back then and even now?
Independence in what I do and my thinking was always a value. I definitely got that from childhood. Responsibility, I don't now live life lavishly. Kindness and goodness and helping other people. You don't have to be successful financially to give back in terms of your time or your money. I mean, I think we should all be just kind, good people all the time. And it's not always money that is the most helpful thing. Sometimes it is your talent and your time that is most important, and making connections. What was interesting in my career is that I started in financial services, and it's kind of a bubble. Probably a lot of our friends are in financial services. I started traveling. I started doing some kind of weird emerging market trekking in Thailand type of travel, while my friends were taking the expensive vacation to Hawaii or Martha's Vineyard and would look at me like, what are you doing? The reason I did that is because it was less expensive. The value I got, and I figured this out right away, is the love of connection, the love of helping people, and being a global citizen. So that came out randomly. I didn't say I want to travel to emerging markets and do weird things. I just did it for a money reason. And it's changed my life because that's what I do today. And that's what I'm really passionate about bringing to other people.
I love how organically this has all come together for you. I'm curious, Jodi, when did this trifecta of time, talent, and money come to the forefront of your attention and your purpose?
I think I've been doing it a lot. But when I left the financial industry, which was about 9 years ago now, so I was in my mid-40s, I just said to myself, I'll know. I want to do something different at some point. I don't know what it is. And I don't exactly know what the time was. I didn't set a age mark or something. And I knew, and I left. And I started really diving into, okay, what do I care about? I care about education for girls because I was this girl that fought really hard to get an education. And then in my travels, I learned how hard it is. If it was hard for me in Milwaukee, Wisconsin to fill out financial aid forms, imagine the girl that is in Thailand, in Rwanda, trying to do that. So giving and that time and talent and money, to girls' education was important. I wanted to be more impactful with my investing. We use the term now, impact investing, on a regular basis. Hey, Jodi, what does that mean to you? That's a very broad title. And okay, can I invest in girls' education? How about female entrepreneurship, which is aligned with it? Because then they graduate and they want to get jobs. So that became a focus. And I started investing in Africa as well, which again, some people think, what? You can invest in companies in Africa? And you can. So that's how it started for me, Sandy. I really used myself as the example and put myself to the test. I learned things and then I just want to share them with other people because I know a lot of these learnings will be helpful.
Jodi, you're married to someone who is also from the financial services industry. And I'm curious if you both are better at talking about money as a result of your business backgrounds. And then maybe you can share how you talk about money if you do.
I don't know if it's because of our business backgrounds. I actually think it's because of our upbringings. He has a little bit of a similar story. When we were dating, I could not wait to introduce our moms because his mom, I think, had a similar story to mine. And he was the oldest child. We had very similar upbringings. We had fathers that I'm going to call them insecure. Money becomes a tool for power when you're insecure, power over, in that case, their wife. So I think it was that. And he, like me, wanted to understand money and use it for good for his life and others. And so he's a really funny story. He is almost 10 years older than me. And he started, put on the nicest suit he could find, tried to clean up his shoes. And he was working at like a penny stock firm in the 1980s. He thought that was a good job. It was a disaster because he's such a good guy. They were giving him the script every day to like
Push some product.
call. I'm going to say the men, because they said if a woman picks up the phone, they said, hang up.
Whoa.
Fascinating story. I think it's more about, we met through the financial services industry, but it was more about our background. And we talk about money all the time in a very healthy way. We're on the same page, which again, to your point on dating, I think is important. It's hard to sit down and say, hey, let's talk about money. But when you travel together, we bought a home together before we were married. And when you do these things, they test you. I think it's good that we test ourselves with our partner to see how that fits. We're very much in sync. We have accounts that are different. We did marry. I was 41 years old when we got married. And so I've always had my separate money and he has his, and that works great for us. We just have like a transactional joint account. So I just say like, whatever works for you as a couple, but we have different ways we invest. I'm very focused on the impact investing. He likes to trade stocks. It's a little bit different. And so it works for us. But yes, we talk about it all the time.
Jodi, thanks for sharing all that and bringing it to life. I appreciate that you specifically shared how you and your husband keep your finances separate, because that is something that is common and works for many couples. I'm curious, do you guys compare notes and share information with each other? Or is it just completely separate except for that transactional account that you mentioned?
We share information. I'll say I'm kind of on the forefront of it and I like to learn about, do things differently. I do a lot now in private investing. Again, it could be in the US, it could be in Africa. He's come into that because of my learnings there. I love things like donor advised funds, which I think are a great tool to combine how you're investing and tax and giving together. He's set up a donor advised fund for himself. We bring those tools to our family. In particular, we don't have children, but our nieces and nephews, because we want them to talk about money too. We want to pass on what we went through our own childhoods. We think we have a really healthy money relationship, and talking about it is key. And we want to pass that on.
Giving me goosebumps.
I know, you speak my language and I yours.
Jodi, you lead immersive small group travel all over the world in really interesting places. The people who go on these experiences with you, are they of all different ages?
Yes. And I think that's important.
That is important. And it costs money to travel. I'm curious if you ever talk with your clients about their money experiences and even how they're experiencing money when they go to these places with you.
It comes up, when you travel on the other side of the world with strangers, because most people, they might bring a friend, but they don't know each other. It's weird. You talk about everything. You talk about love and sex and money. And
isn't that funny?
You don't talk about at home with somebody you've known for 10 years. So yes, we do. I'll give you just a couple of highlights of people that come to mind. There was one young woman that joined a trip. She was 16. She was brought on the trip by her godmother. And she grew up Mormon. She had a very limited upbringing and money as well. She fundraised part of the trip because there was a donation component of this trip. That was really cool because she brought her story and what she was doing and her mission out there to her broader community. The trip ended up changing her life. Literally, she was 16, so she was going to be applying to college. It changed where she applied, what she wanted to study. She ended up with either gender studies, like major or minor, but it was because of the impact of that trip. So that was one great story. I have another woman, mid-40s, kind of in a career transition. I don't really know what I'm going to do. I'm just going to do this trip and see what comes at me. And we were in Cambodia, and this was pre-COVID. As you'll remember, in Asia, COVID kind of started earlier there. And so they were feeling the ramifications in Australia and China. And so there were some businesses having a really hard time. And we were meeting with these entrepreneurs, these women entrepreneurs that were supported by this, it's called She Investments. And I remember at the table, because there was this one entrepreneur talking about her struggles as COVID was hitting and how she needed help. And I knew this woman, this participant on the trip, she was the perfect person to help. I so wanted to sign her up. I can't. She needs to raise her hand. She did. And that continued after the trip. And that changed her life and career because she saw, wow, my skills are really useful to entrepreneurs. She literally is running the student entrepreneurship program now at George Washington University. So that's a great story of how it changed her life and career. And then there are the little things. One thing that happens in Africa a lot is that I think, particularly as Americans, we need to give to those poor people. We all grew up in the 1980s and 90s seeing the commercials, Sally Struthers on TV, and we're ingrained with that. We have a little bit of maybe guilt when we're born here. And so when we see people that live very different lives, and so I remember being at a home visit. There's a Maasai family that I've become very close with. We visited their home. And I remember this gentleman on the trip saying, I just want to give them money. And we talked about it that evening over dinner when we were alone, because giving money isn't the solution. And why he probably came to that is because it makes him feel better and takes away that guilt. But really, that's not helping the long-term solution because they're just going to be struggling in 2 weeks anyway to buy food. That's why I like to look for longer term, and education for me is always the longer term solution to bring people up.
You're making me think of a saying that I can't remember completely about teaching someone to fish so that they can create their own source of food and nourishment rather than just giving them money, which is short-lived. Jodi, all of this makes me wonder, what is something you've done with money that you are most proud of to date? Because it doesn't sound like you're done yet.
I'm not. I'm going to cheat and give you two. Again, I'm just going to recite the education again, because if I hadn't taken my meager savings and taken out loans and all of that, that wouldn't have happened. In my career in financial services, so I took a job at Matthews Asia. When they gave me my offer, it was a salary and bonus package that was less than I had been making before. And that felt weird because
Yes.
what?
Why is that?
I've had that feeling before.
But there was equity. There was that, a small component. And I went back and I said, look, I understand boutique, all that. You're more limited. This isn't a big Wall Street firm, but here's where I'm at. Can you up the equity portion? And they did. But bigger than that is I think I gave a signal to the management that equity was really important to me from the conversation before I started. And so then they knew that. And first of all, I did keep asking, of course, but they knew I was going to keep asking. And so they kept giving it to me. And that was huge. That really gave me the ability, as I led our US business initiatives and we were really successful in our growth, but to say when I knew, when values were out of aligned and I knew it was time to go, that I could go. So thank goodness I asked at the time of offer. It started a great trend.
Can I underscore that for a second? Because I think it's really something we've heard a lot, that people don't ask. And a lot of times women didn't ask. And I think we're getting better, but the more we talk about it, we'll be more and more comfortable. And I love that you shared you did not have any issue. And as a result, you got the answer. And the answer was oftentimes yes. So good for you.
It felt great. Of course, I was really stuck with that offer. And I reached out to a lot of my respected friend network. And a lot of people told me, no, don't take that. Go take that offer from the big firm who's like matching you or a tire. But equity is really valuable.
That same idea with people in the African village that you were talking about. Ownership. Jodi, what's your next money conversation going to be and who's it going to be with?
My husband and I, we've had this on our to-do list for a couple of years. We need to update our trusts and our wills and do all our estate planning. And I'm glad we didn't do it before because actually during COVID, we moved from San Francisco. We now live in Santa Fe, New Mexico. So we've been talking about that a lot, about really it starts with values. And then this just comes to structure where we just call in our experts, legal and otherwise, to help pull it together. We don't have children. The person we're naming as our backup executor is actually our niece. And she's in her mid-20s. We have a very close relationship with her. We talk about values and money and all these things all the time. And I'm so proud of her, of everything she's done. She's smart. She just lives her values. She wants to learn about money, and I am welcome. We'd like to help her through all these things. And so I'm naming her as the successor trustee, executor, all that, not because she has all of the knowledge financially, but she understands us and our values like nobody else. And I think that is the number one thing to have for somebody in that role. And I'm highly organized, making it very easy for her. Here's who to talk to when you need help, legal and tax and financial advisor. So making it really easy for her. And my favorite part, though, about giving her this really big pain in the butt job, if something potentially happens, is that it's a great learning opportunity along the way. So I have to bring her into our life and this money conversation even deeper, which is going to pay dividends for her and how she thinks about her life going forward.
What a gift, Jodi, you're giving her. Like you said, though, it's a lot of work, but the learning, it's so tangible because it's real.
The confidence that you're placing in her.
And just think of the generation of change. Again, I didn't know what my father made. I didn't even know his salary, let alone what do you want to do with your money to pass it on. And I love that in one generation, you can make that change.
You absolutely can. Jodi, what a wonderful conversation. Before we let you go, where's the best place for our listeners to find you?
I love LinkedIn. So the LinkedIn link, Jodi Morris SF. And my company and my website is Connecting Growth Globally. So all those three words together.com.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing your stories with us and keep making such great impact in the world.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Money Tales podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, share it with someone you think would benefit from listening. And leave us a review on your favorite podcasting platform. Your ratings and reviews help more people find our podcast. If you're inspired to gain clarity and peace of mind about financial matters, don't hesitate to reach out to our team at Aspiriant. Go to aspiriant.com/start a dialogue. Or you can email Sandy and me at podcasts@aspiriant.com. See you next time.